It's going to be okay, buddy. We'll get through this together.
An 8-year-old boy in a wheelchair breaks down in a Walmart cereal aisle sobbing, "My dad's in prison. Can you come to Father Sunday instead?" To a tattooed Hell's Angel. And 72 hours later, 76 motorcycles shut down an entire elementary school. Before we dive into this powerful story, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city in the comments below. And if you believe that showing up is more powerful than biology, hit that subscribe button right now. Now let's get into the story. The kitchen calendar hung on the wall like a wanted poster. Joseph Goulding sat at the scratched dining table in their small apartment, wheels of his chair pressed against the edge, staring at the bright yellow flyer from Lincoln Elementary. His mom, Sarah, stood at the sink washing dishes that had been clean for 5 minutes, pretending not to watch him. "Annual Father-Son Day," the flyer announced in cheerful blue letters. "Friday, March 15th, dads and father figures welcome. Lunch, games, and memories in the making." Joseph's small hand gripped the red marker. He circled the date once, twice, 3 times until the ink bled through the paper onto the table. His throat felt tight. His chest hurt in that way it did when he tried not to cry. Sarah turned off the water. "Baby, you don't have to go. We can say you're sick that day. Everyone will know why," Joseph said quietly. She dried her hands on a towel that had seen better years, came over and knelt beside his wheelchair. Her knees cracked. She was 32 but looked older. Single motherhood and trauma aged you faster than the sun. "Your Uncle Mike said he might be able to get off work. He's not my dad." The words came out harsher than he meant. Sarah's face did that thing it always did when he mentioned his father, a complicated mix of anger, heartbreak, and guilt that 8-year-olds shouldn't have to recognize, but Joseph knew by heart. His father, Derek Goulding, inmate 847392 at the State Correctional Facility 2 hours north. The man who'd been Joseph's hero until he got drunk, got behind the wheel and turned their Ford Explorer into a metal coffin that crushed Joseph's spine and killed their future in one terrible moment on Highway 9. Joseph was 4 when it happened. He remembered headlights spinning, glass everywhere, his dad's voice screaming his name, then sirens, then hospital rooms that smelled like bleach and fear. Then a courtroom where a judge said words like vehicular assault and criminal negligence and 8 years. He didn't walk after that. Didn't have a dad after that either. Not one who came to school events or tucked him in or taught him to ride a bike he'd never ride. At school on Monday, the flyers were everywhere. Taped to every locker. Pinned to every bulletin board. A constant reminder that Joseph's seat in the gym would have an empty chair next to it while every other kid sat with their father. Ryan Bennett made sure he knew it too. Found him by the water fountain during recess, his crew of 4th graders flanking him like little wolves. "Yo, Wheels," Ryan said, leaning against Joseph's wheelchair like it was a park bench. "You gonna Zoom with your cell block for Father Sunday? They let inmates use tablets now, right?" His friends laughed, that sharp, cruel laughter that cut deeper than any punch. Joseph's hands tightened on his wheels. "Leave me alone." "What's your dad in for again?" "Oh yeah, drunk driving. Real hero move, bro." "Did he get a trophy for crippling his own kid?" Something hot and sharp stabbed through Joseph's chest. His vision blurred. But he'd learned the hard way, that crying just made them laugh harder. So he swallowed it down, pushed his wheels hard, and rolled away while Ryan shouted after him, "Tell him I said hi. Cell block represent." That night, Joseph lay in bed staring at his ceiling covered in glow-in-the-dark stars his dad had put up 6 years ago. Back when Derek Goulding was still Daddy and not inmate 847392. Back when Joseph's legs worked and the future looked different. He thought about Father-Son Day, about the empty chair, about sitting in that gym alone while Ryan's dad, perfect, employed, unincarcerated Todd Bennett, sat beside his son laughing and doing relay races and building birdhouses. About everyone seeing what Joseph already knew, that he was the kid nobody's father wanted to claim. His hands found each other in the dark, fingers lacing together the way his dad used to hold his hand before everything broke. And Joseph made a decision. He wasn't going. He'd fake sick, hide, anything but sit in that gym and let the whole school watch him be fatherless. He pulled the covers over his head and whispered into the darkness the same prayer he'd whispered 1,000 times since he was 4 years old. I just wanted Dad. Just for one day, that's all. The universe, as usual, didn't answer. But it was listening. And 3 days later, in the cereal aisle of a Walmart at 9:30 on a Thursday night, everything would change. Top dog. Nate hadn't planned on being in Walmart at 9:30 on a Thursday night. He'd planned on being 3 beers deep at the clubhouse, arguing about carburetor settings with Skinny Mike and avoiding anything that resembled feelings. But his bike needed oil, his fridge needed food, and adulting didn't stop just because you had a criminal record and a leather vest. He pushed his cart through the fluorescent wasteland of aisle 9, cereal, crackers, processed hope in cardboard boxes. The kind of shopping you do when you're 42, single, and your idea of meal prep is adding hot water to ramen. That's when he heard it. A sound that made him stop mid-reach for a box of Cheerios. A kid crying. Not the tantrum kind. The breaking kind. Nate had spent 3 years in state prison. He knew that sound. The kind of crying you do when you've run out of ways to be strong. He turned the corner and saw him. Small kid in a wheelchair, maybe 8 years old, wearing a red jacket zipped all the way up despite the store's heat. His hands were gripping the armrest so hard his knuckles were white. Across the aisle, some dad was lifting his son onto his shoulders, both of them laughing, completely oblivious to the boy whose entire world was shattering 10 feet away. Nate's first instinct was to keep walking. Not his business, not his problem. He'd learned in prison that getting involved in other people's pain was a good way to collect your own. But the kid looked up, made eye contact. And Nate saw himself at 8 years old. Different reason, same abandonment, same crushing weight of being the kid nobody wanted. He rolled his cart closer, squatted down. His knees protested. Too many years on bikes and bar floors, but he got low enough to be eye level. "Hey, little man, you okay?" The kid shook his head. Couldn't speak. Just tears pouring down his face. Nate's tattooed hands, flames and skulls and bad decisions inked permanent, pulled out his phone. He'd learned this trick inside. Sometimes when words were too hard, you typed them, gave people permission to say the unsayable. He opened his notes app, typed 4 words, and turned the screen toward the boy. "Dad is in prison?" The kid's eyes went wide, like someone had just spoken his secret language. He nodded, gasping for air between sobs. Nate's chest tightened. He knew this story. Different details, same shame. Mine, too. Once upon a time. "What's your name?" "Joseph." "Joseph, I'm Nate. Where's your mom?" "Parking lot, getting the car." "You gonna be okay?" Joseph shook his head again. And then, in a voice so small Nate almost missed it, the kid said something that would change both their lives. "We got Father-Son Day at school next Friday. I don't got nobody to take. All the dads will be there. I'm going to be the only one alone." Nate waited. Something else was coming. He could feel it. "Can you Joseph's voice cracked. "Can you come instead?" The Walmart aisle went silent except for the hum of refrigeration units and a distant price check on aisle 4. Nate stared at this 8-year-old kid in a wheelchair who'd just asked a Hell's Angel, a tattooed ex-con with a record longer than most grocery receipts, to pretend to be his father for a day. Every instinct screamed, "Walk away." This was messy. This was complicated. This was the kind of thing that ended badly for guys like him. But Joseph was looking at him with those eyes, those "please don't leave me" two eyes. And Nate heard himself say the words before his brain could stop him. "Let me think on it, kid, but I ain't promising nothing." Joseph nodded, wiped his face. "Thank you for not laughing." That sentence hit Nate harder than any punch he'd taken in prison. He stood up, knees cracking, and watched Joseph wheel toward the front of the store where a tired-looking woman, his mom clearly, was frantically searching the aisles. Nate stayed frozen, cart abandoned, staring at the Lucky Charms and the fluorescent lights and the normalcy of American grocery shopping that had just been interrupted by the most abnormal request of his life. His phone buzzed. Text from Skinny Mike. "Where you at? Beer's getting warm." Nate typed back, "Got a situation. Be there in 20. He didn't buy the oil, didn't buy the ramen, just walked out into the parking lot, fired up his Harley, and rode straight to the clubhouse with one thought screaming through his head. A kid just asked me to be his dad. And somewhere between the Walmart and the highway, Nate realized he was actually considering it. Sarah Goulding answered the door at 7:30 Saturday morning, expecting maybe Jehovah's Witnesses or a lost delivery driver. What she got was 6'2" of tattooed muscle in a black leather vest with Hell's Angels patched across the back, holding a motorcycle helmet like a nervous kid holding flowers on prom night. Her hand went to the pepper spray on her keychain. "Ma'am, I know how this looks," the biker said, hands visible, voice calm. "My name's Nate. I met your son Thursday night at Walmart. He was—" "Mom, that's him!" Joseph's voice exploded from inside the apartment, the sound of wheelchair wheels on linoleum, fast and desperate. "That's the guy from the store." Sarah's brain tried to process. The guy from the store. The one Joseph had mentioned exactly once before shutting down completely. The one he'd said understood. Joseph appeared at her hip, face lit up in a way she hadn't seen in months. "You came back." Nate looked down at the kid, then back at Sarah. "Can we talk? Just 5 minutes? I know I'm the last person you want to see at your door on a Saturday morning, but your boy asked me something and I can't stop thinking about it." Sarah should have slammed the door, should have called the cops, should have done 100 things that responsible single mothers in small-town America do when motorcycle gang members show up uninvited. But something in Nate's eyes stopped her. Something that looked a lot like the fear she saw in her own mirror every morning. 5 minutes, she said, stepping aside. Their apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, kitchen table with mismatched chairs, walls thin enough to hear the neighbor's TV, the kind of place you land in when your husband goes to prison and disability payments don't cover much beyond survival. Nate sat in the chair Sarah offered, looking comically large in their tiny kitchen. Joseph wheeled up close, practically vibrating with nervous energy. Sarah put coffee on. Didn't offer him any yet. Waited. "Your son," Nate started, then stopped. Tried again. "Thursday night, Joseph was having a rough time. Asked me something that's been stuck in my head like a splinter. He asked if I'd come to his school's Father-Son Day because his dad's not available." Sarah's jaw tightened. Not available. That's one way to put it. "I did 3 years in state," Nate said bluntly. "Assault, reckless endangerment. got out 5 years back. So when Joseph told me about his dad, I understood what that weight feels like. The shame of it. The way people look at you like your family's crime is tattooed on your forehead. Sarah's hands stopped mid-pour. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she didn't expect. Honesty. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Because I told him I'd think about it, and I did. And ma'am, I know how this sounds, but I want to show up for him. Not just me, my whole chapter. We got 76 patched members. What if we all came? What if every empty seat that's supposed to be for a dad got filled with someone who chose to be there?" The coffee pot hissed. The neighbor's TV murmured through the wall. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Sarah looked at her son, saw hope breaking across his face like sunrise. Saw the same kid who'd cried himself to sleep every night since the school sent home that flyer. "You're talking about bringing a motorcycle gang to an elementary school," she said slowly. "Yes, ma'am. You understand how that sounds? How that looks? My son already gets bullied for his wheelchair and his father. You think showing up with bikers is going to help that?" Nate leaned forward. "I think the kids who bully him are going to think twice when they see 76 grown men willing to sit in those seats. I think your boy deserves to roll into that gym with his head up instead of hiding. And I think sometimes the scariest looking people are exactly the ones who show up when everyone else walks away." Sarah's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. She'd been alone in this fight for 4 years. Alone in the hospital rooms, alone in the courtrooms, alone in the school meetings where teachers spoke in careful voices about Joseph's challenges and behavioral concerns. Nobody had shown up. Not Derek's family, not hers. Not the church that promised support then disappeared when prison became permanent. And now a Hell's Angel was sitting in her kitchen offering to fill 76 seats. "If you do this," Sarah said, voice shaking, "you don't disappear after. You don't show up, get your photo op, and ghost my son. Because if you hurt him worse than his father already did, I will find a way to make your life hell. Are we clear?" Nate met her eyes. "Crystal, ma'am, we're in or we're out. No halfway." Joseph grabbed Nate's tattooed hand with both of his. "Please, please come." Nate looked at this 8-year-old kid in a wheelchair who'd already survived more abandonment than most adults, and made a promise he hoped to God he could keep. "We're coming, little man. All of us." The clubhouse smelled like motor oil, stale beer, and the kind of history that soaked into concrete floors over decades. Saturday night, and every patched member of the local Hells Angels chapter was packed into the main room. 76 men and women who'd chosen this life, this family, this brotherhood over everything society told them they should want. Top dog Nate stood at the head of the scarred wooden table that had witnessed more club business than anyone cared to count. In his hand, the bright yellow flyer from Lincoln Elementary, Father-Son Day, March 15th. "We're voting on something different tonight," Nate said, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Not a run, not a fundraiser. Something that's going to sound soft to some of you, but I'm asking anyway." The room quieted. When the president called for attention, you gave it. Nate told them about Joseph, about Walmart, about the wheelchair and the tears and the question no 8-year-old should have to ask a stranger, about a father in prison and a boy drowning in shame. "Kid asked me to come to Father-Son Day because he's got nobody else. And I'm asking you all to come with me, 76 of us. Fill every empty seat in that gym so he doesn't sit alone." Silence. Then Skinny Mike, 30 years in the club, laughed. Not mean, just surprised. "Brother, we're doing PTA now? What's next, bake sales?" A few chuckles, but not many. Road Dog, a 50-something Vietnam vet with more ink than skin, spoke up. "How old's the kid?" 8. "Dad's inside for what?" "DUI crash, vehicular assault, kid's in a wheelchair because of it." The room shifted. Different energy now, because half the men in this room had records. A third had done time. And almost all of them knew what it felt like to be the kid everyone crossed the street to avoid. Raven, one of 3 women in the chapter, leaned forward. "I got a son I don't see no more. His mom won't let me near him 'cause of my record. If I could go back and have someone show up for him when I couldn't, I'd want that. I'm in." Hammer, a former Marine with a Purple Heart and a dishonorable discharge, nodded. "My old man was in prison half my childhood. Drunk, mean, never came to nothing. I would have killed for someone to show up. Count me in." One by one, voices around the table, some hesitant, some immediate. But the tide was turning. Then Big Frank stood up, 6'5", 280, arms like tree trunks. "Devil's advocate here. We roll 76 deep to an elementary school. Cops are going to be all over us. Parents are going to lose their minds. School's probably going to say no. And if one of us screws up, one wrong word, one bad look, we're all catching heat." "He's right," Nate admitted. "This could blow up in our faces. But that kid asked us. Not the cops, not social services, us. The guys everyone's scared of. And I think that means something." Skinny Mike, who'd joked earlier, set down his beer. "I got a question. We do this once and disappear, or we actually commit. 'Cause if we're showing up, we gotta mean it. Can't be breaking that kid's heart twice." "We commit," Nate said without hesitation. "We show up for Father-Son Day, and then we keep showing up. Homework help, chair repairs, whatever he needs. That's what I'm proposing." The room erupted into debate. Voices overlapping, concerns about liability, police, reputation. Others arguing about loyalty, purpose, what it meant to protect the powerless. Finally, Raven called for order. "All in favor of backing this kid, making this happen right, and showing up like the family he's asking for. Say aye." The ayes rolled through the room like thunder. Opposed? 3 guys stayed silent. Not opposed, just abstaining. 73-0. The Hells Angels were going to Father-Son Day. Nate felt something crack in his chest, something that might have been hope. "All right. Now comes the hard part. We gotta convince the school to let us in." Lincoln Elementary School's main office smelled like copy paper and institutional coffee. Monday morning, 8:30, and Principal Richard Hargrove sat across from the most intimidating parent meeting of his 26-year education career. Top dog Nate, Raven, Hammer, 3 Hells Angels in leather vests, sitting in chairs designed for worried mothers and frustrated fathers. Behind them, through the glass door, Officer Daniels, school resource officer, 15 years LAPD before retiring to small-town America, watched with his hand resting on his duty belt. Hargrove had Googled them, found arrest records, news articles, the kind of history that made school administrators break out in hives. He'd also found charity rides, veteran support events, and toy drives. Confusing contradictions. "Mr. Nate," Hargrove began, unsure of protocol. "You're here about Joseph Goulding and Father-Son Day." "Yes, sir. We'd like to attend. All 76 members of our chapter." Hargrove's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. 76? One for every seat that's supposed to have a father figure. Joseph's dad can't be there. We're volunteering to fill the gap. Officer Daniels stepped inside, closed the door. You understand this is a school, not a clubhouse. We have protocols, liability, parents who will absolutely lose their minds if we allow. He stopped himself, recalibrated. If we allow this. Raven spoke up, her voice steady. We understand your concerns, officer. We're not asking to ride into the gym or cause a scene. We're asking to sit quietly, participate in the activities, and give one kid a day where he doesn't feel abandoned. Hargrove rubbed his temples. I've read your files. Assault, drug charges, weapons violations. You're asking me to invite convicted felons onto campus with children. Yes, sir, Nate said. We are. Because Joseph asked, and because in America people who've done their time are still citizens, still human, still capable of showing up for a kid who needs them. The room went quiet except for the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant sound of children at recess. Hargrove looked at Officer Daniels. They'd worked together for 8 years, developed a language. Right now, Daniels's expression said this is insane, but also maybe not wrong. Here's what I need, Hargrove said finally. Background checks on every single member who plans to attend. No weapons, period. You park off school property. You enter through the main doors like everyone else. No vests with explicit content. No intimidation. One complaint from one parent and this ends immediately. Are we clear? Nate nodded. We can work with that. And you need to understand something, Hargrove continued, his voice softer now. Joseph gets bullied. A boy named Ryan Bennett and his father Todd have made it clear they think Joseph doesn't belong at this event. If you show up and things escalate, they won't, Hammer interrupted. We're not here to fight. We're here to protect. There's a difference. Officer Daniels crossed his arms. I'm going to be there. Full uniform. Any trouble, and I don't care how many of you there are, you're all leaving in cuffs. Understood, Nate said. We'll cooperate with every rule, every request. This isn't about us. It's about Joseph. Hargrove stared at the yellow flyer on his desk. Thought about Joseph Goulding, who'd asked to use the bathroom 4 times during last week's class to avoid questions about Father-Son Day. Thought about the empty seat that would haunt that boy for years. Friday, March 15th, 10 a.m. I'm allowing this. But God help me if this goes wrong. It won't, Nate promised. He stood, extended his hand. Hargrove hesitated, then shook it. Walking out, Raven whispered, That was too easy. It's not the school we got to worry about, Nate replied. It's the parents. Word's gonna spread, and when it does, all hell's gonna break loose. He was right. By Tuesday afternoon, the Lincoln Elementary Parents Facebook group had exploded. The post went live at 3:15 on Tuesday. Urgent! School allowing Hell's Angels at Father-Son Day. Anyone else concerned? Within an hour, 217 comments. Half outraged, half supportive, all passionate. This is disgusting. We send our kids to school to be safe, not surrounded by criminals. My brother is autistic and got bullied his whole life. If bikers had shown up for him, maybe he'd still be here. Leave them alone. Todd Bennett here. My son Ryan will not be attending if this circus happens. Principal Hargrove should be fired. Y'all are scared of bikers, but not scared of the dads who ignore their kids or the system that fails kids like Joseph. Priorities. Sarah's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts from other parents, some supportive, most not. The church group she'd tried to join sent a message asking her to reconsider this decision for Joseph's sake. She sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, reading comment after comment that debated her son's worth, his right to have people show up for him, whether a child with an incarcerated father even deserved a spot at Father-Son Day. Joseph wheeled up beside her. "Mom, are they still coming?" Sarah looked at her son, saw the hope and the fear battling in his eyes. "I don't know, baby." Her phone rang. Nate. "You seeing this?" he asked without preamble. "All of it. We're still coming. But I need you to know, this is going to get uglier before it gets better. Parents are talking about pulling their kids. Todd Bennett's threatening legal action. You and Joseph are going to be in the spotlight." Sarah's hand tightened on the phone. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you can still back out. We'll understand. This was supposed to help Joseph, not make his life harder." She looked at her son, 8 years old, survivor of a crash that should have killed him, living with the stigma of a father behind bars and a body that didn't work the way it was supposed to, asking for one day where he didn't have to be ashamed. "We're not backing out," Sarah said firmly. "If you're still in, we're still in." "We're in," Nate confirmed. "All 76 of us." That night, Joseph couldn't sleep. He'd overheard some of the phone calls, heard words like gang and danger and inappropriate. Heard Ryan's dad on a voicemail telling the school that prison kids don't belong at family events. He lay in bed, glow-in-the-dark stars above him, wheelchair parked beside his bed, and wondered if asking Nate had been a mistake, if he'd made everything worse. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize. "This is Raven, from the club. Nate gave me your mom's number. Just wanted you to know, we're coming, no matter what anyone says. We don't break promises to kids. Sleep good, Joseph. You got 76 people in your corner now." Joseph read it 3 times. Tears slid down his cheeks. Not sad tears. Something else. Something that felt like being seen. He texted back, "Thank you." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Thank us on Friday when you see what we got planned." At the clubhouse, Nate couldn't sleep either. He sat in his office, really just a corner with a desk and a filing cabinet, staring at printouts of the Facebook comments. The hate, the fear, the assumption that men like him couldn't possibly have good intentions. Hammer walked in, 2 beers in hand, sat down without asking. "You having second thoughts?" Hammer asked. "Every single one," Nate admitted. "What if we make it worse? What if the kid gets bullied harder after this? What if we prove every parent right? Or," Hammer said, "what if we prove them wrong? What if 76 men show up, behave like perfect gentlemen, and give that boy the best day of his life? What if we show America that ex-cons can be protectors?" Nate took a long pull from the beer. "That's a lot of what-ifs. That's called faith, brother. Something we're not used to having in us." Friday morning would answer every question. For better or worse, 76 Hell's Angels were about to walk into Lincoln Elementary School. And the whole town was watching. Friday, March 15th, 7:45 a.m. Joseph sat in the passenger seat of his mom's beat-up Honda Civic, wheelchair folded in the trunk, staring at Lincoln Elementary like it was a firing squad. Cars filled the parking lot, dads dropping off kids, teachers arriving early, news vans from 2 local stations parked across the street. Word had spread beyond the town, beyond the Facebook group. This was a story now. Hell's Angels attend elementary school Father-Son Day had gone regional. Sarah gripped the steering wheel. "You sure about this, baby?" Joseph nodded. He wasn't sure. but he was committed. Then they heard it, that sound, low and rolling like distant thunder, getting closer. The unmistakable rumble of motorcycle engines. One bike appeared at the end of the street, then 5, then 20, then more than anyone could count, rolling in tight formation down the quiet suburban road like a parade nobody invited, but everyone was going to remember. 76 Harleys, chrome gleaming in the morning sun, riders in full leather, vests displaying patches earned through years of loyalty. They rolled slow, respectful, engines throttled down to a low growl instead of the usual roar. Parents froze. Kids pressed their faces to car windows. Teachers came outside. Officer Daniels positioned himself at the front entrance, radio in hand, watching. The bike stopped 1 block away, just as promised. Engines cut in synchronized silence. 76 riders dismounted, removed helmets, and formed up like a military unit preparing for inspection. Top Dog Nate walked to Sarah's car, tapped on the window. She rolled it down. "Morning, Joseph. You ready?" Joseph's voice came out small. "There's so many people." "There are. And every single one of them is here for you. Not for show, not for cameras, for you. Now let's get you out of this car and show this school what family really looks like." Sarah got the wheelchair out. Joseph transferred with practiced ease, years of physical therapy making it second nature. Nate crouched down, eye level, just like in the Walmart aisle. "Listen to me," Nate said quietly. "In about 2 minutes, we're going to walk through those doors. Some people are going to stare. Some might whisper. Todd Bennett and his kid are probably going to have something to say. But you're not walking in there alone. You're walking in with 76 men and women who chose you, who think you matter, who will sit in every empty seat your father left behind. You understand?" Joseph's hands trembled on his wheels. What if they laugh? Then they're laughing at all of us, and little man, nobody laughs at us twice. The bikers formed a corridor, not touching Joseph, not crowding him, just flanking him on both sides like the Secret Service protecting the president. Nate pushed Joseph's chair. Sarah walked beside them. And together, they moved toward the school entrance, while the entire parking lot watched in stunned silence. Ryan Bennett and his father, Todd, stood near the front doors. Todd's face was red, his jaw clenched. Ryan smirked, phone already out. "This is a joke," Todd muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Prison kid brings a biker gang. What's next? Conjugal visits in the gym?" Nate stopped, turned, looked Todd Bennett dead in the eye with the kind of calm that was somehow more terrifying than anger. "You got something to say it to me. Not to an 8-year-old in a wheelchair." Todd's smirk faltered. Behind Nate, 75 bikers stood silent, waiting. Officer Daniels stepped between them, hand up. "We're not doing this," Daniels said firmly. "Everyone inside, now." They moved through the doors. The gym was decorated with balloons and banners. Lincoln Elementary Father-Son Day 2024. Rows of folding chairs arranged in pairs, one regular chair, one marked Dad with a small label. Every other kid was already seated with their father, laughing, talking, normal. Joseph's section was empty. 7 rows of empty Dad chairs surrounding his wheelchair spot. Until the Hells Angels filed in. One by one, they took their seats, filling every chair, every empty space, surrounding Joseph in a wall of leather and ink and quiet, fierce protection. Nate sat directly behind him, hand resting gently on the back of Joseph's wheelchair. The gym went silent. 200 people watching 76 bikers sit down like they belonged there, like they'd been there all along. Principal Hargrove stepped to the microphone, his voice shaking slightly. Welcome everyone to our annual Father-Son Day. Today we celebrate the men who show up, who support, who love. And this year, we're reminded that family isn't always blood. Sometimes family is who chooses to be here. He looked directly at Joseph and the bikers surrounding him. Let's begin. The first activity was the three-legged race. Dads and sons, ankles tied together, racing across the gym floor. Ryan Bennett and his father were favored to win. They'd practiced. Todd had bragged about it on Facebook. Joseph stared at his wheelchair. At his legs, that didn't work. At the impossibility of participating. Nate leaned down. You thinking what I'm thinking? That I can't do this? That we're about to cheat the system? Nate grinned. Hammer, Skinny Mike, get over here. They rigged it. Hammer tied his ankle to Joseph's wheelchair wheel. Skinny Mike held the other side. When the whistle blew, they ran, pushed, wheeled Joseph across the gym faster than any three-legged duo had ever moved. Joseph's laughter echoed off the walls, pure and unfiltered joy. They won. By a lot. Todd Bennett's face turned purple. Ryan stood frozen, phone dangling in his hand, the planned mocking video forgotten. Next was the birdhouse building. Fathers and sons working together with wood, nails, and tiny hammers. Joseph had small hands, good at detail work. Nate held the pieces steady. Together they built a crooked, beautiful birdhouse with Joseph and Nate carved into the side. Around them, other bikers worked with Joseph too, passing him tools, offering advice, telling terrible dad jokes that made him laugh until his stomach hurt. Why don't seagulls fly over the bay? I don't know why. Because then they'd be bagels. 76 grown men groaning at the punchline. Joseph laughing so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. At lunch, the bikers sat in a protective circle around Joseph's table, sharing their food, telling stories, treating him like he was one of them. Like he mattered. Ryan approached, hesitant. His father had left early, furious and embarrassed. But Ryan stayed. He stood at the edge of the biker circle, small and suddenly very aware of how alone he was. Can I sit? Ryan asked quietly. 76 pairs of eyes turned to Joseph, waiting for his call. Joseph looked at the kid who'd tormented him for months, who'd called him Jail Boy Joe, who'd made his life hell. Yeah, Joseph said. You can sit. Ryan sat. Didn't say much, But he didn't mock either. And when Raven offered him half her sandwich, he took it and said thank you. By the end of the day, local news had footage of bikers racing wheelchairs, building birdhouses, and sitting respectfully in a gym full of children. The headline had shifted from Hell's Angels invade school to Hell's Angels show up for boy whose father couldn't. The post went viral. National outlets picked it up. By evening, Joseph's story was trending on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. Comments poured in from across America. This is what we need more of. I'm crying. This is beautiful. My son has a disability and no father. Where do I find bikers like this? But the most important moment happened in the parking lot, after the cameras left and the other families went home. Joseph sat in his wheelchair, exhausted, happy, overwhelmed. Nate knelt beside him one last time. You good, little man? Better than good. That was the best day ever. Yeah? Yeah. Joseph paused. Will you come back to other stuff, or was this just a one-time thing? Nate looked at the 75 bikers standing behind him. Every single one nodded. Kid, you're stuck with us now. We claimed those seats. They're ours till you tell us to leave. Joseph threw his arms around Nate's neck, held on tight. and whispered the words that broke every hardened biker in the parking lot. "I got dads now. 76 of them." 3 months later, Lincoln Elementary looked different. The wheelchair ramp that had been broken for 2 years was fixed. Hammer and Skinny Mike had spent a weekend rebuilding it. The anti-bullying posters in the hallway now featured photos from Father-Son Day, including one of Joseph surrounded by bikers, grinning. Joseph wheeled through the halls wearing a leather vest, kid-sized, custom-made by the club, with a patch that read, "Honorary Hell's Angel, Lincoln Elementary." Teachers smiled at him. Kids asked about the bikes. Ryan Bennett had become, improbably, something like a friend. The bullying hadn't disappeared completely. But it was different now, because everyone knew that if you messed with Joseph Goulding, you were messing with 76 bikers who showed up for him. Sarah stood in the school parking lot, watching Nate help Joseph with his backpack. Over the past 3 months, Nate had become a fixture. Homework help on Tuesdays, physical therapy appointments on Thursdays, Saturday morning bike washes, where Joseph supervised from his chair, giving orders like a foreman. "You don't have to do this, you know," Sarah said to Nate one afternoon. "You showed up for Father-Son Day." That was more than enough. Nate looked at Joseph, who was arguing with Skinny Mike about the best way to polish chrome. "Ma'am, with respect, I disagree. That day wasn't the end. It was the beginning." "Of what?" "Of him knowing he matters. Of us knowing we can be more than our records. Of proving that America's got room for second chances." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "His father gets out in 4 years. When that happens—" "We'll still be here," Nate said simply. "Whether his dad comes back or not, Joseph's got us. That's not changing." At the clubhouse, the dynamics had shifted too. Father-Son Day had awakened something in the chapter. They'd started a mentorship program, pairing up with kids from single-parent homes, offering rides to school, helping with homework, showing up for games and recitals. The local news did a follow-up story: how Hell's Angels became unlikely father figures in small-town America. It featured interviews with parents, kids, and teachers, all saying the same thing: these men showed up when no one else did. On a warm Saturday in June, Joseph and Sarah drove 2 hours north to the state correctional facility. Visiting day. Derek Goulding sat across from them behind plexiglass, wearing orange, looking older than his 34 years. "I saw the news," Derek said through the phone. His voice was hoarse. "About the bikers." Joseph nodded. His hands rested on his wheels, steady and sure. "They came to Father-Son Day." "I should have been there." "You couldn't be. You're here." Derek's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Joseph. For the crash, for your legs, for missing everything. I'm so sorry." Joseph looked at his father, the man who'd given him life and then taken so much away. The man he'd once loved more than anyone. The man he'd learned to live without. "I know you are, Dad. And when you get out, we can figure out what that looks like. But right now, I'm okay. I got people." "The bikers?" "Yeah. Nate and the guys. They show up every week. They don't make promises they can't keep. And they don't make me feel like I'm broken." Derek's face crumpled. He understood. His son had found fathers in his absence, found men who proved that showing up was more important than biology. "I'm glad," Derek whispered. "I'm glad you're not alone." On the drive home, Joseph was quiet, processing. Finally, he said, "Mom, I think I'm okay with Dad not being at everything." "Is that bad?" Sarah reached over, squeezed his hand. "No, baby, that's healthy. Your dad made choices. They had consequences. You don't have to carry that anymore." "I know, because I got Nate and Hammer and Raven and all of them." "You do? They're my family now, right? Even if they're not blood?" "They're your family," Sarah confirmed. "The one you chose and the one that chose you." That evening at the clubhouse, Joseph sat at the head of the long table where club business happened. Nate had called a special meeting, 76 bikers packed in, beers in hand, waiting. "Brothers and sisters," Nate said, his hand on Joseph's shoulder. "When this kid asked me to come to Father Sunday, I thought it was a one-time thing, a favor, a good deed. But it became something else. It became a reminder that we're more than our records. More than what people fear. We're protectors, mentors, family." He looked at Joseph. "This kid taught us that showing up is the most important thing you can do. That family isn't about biology. It's about loyalty. About choosing someone and staying." Joseph held up a small patch, the one the club had made him. Honorary member. Lincoln Elementary Chapter. "You all showed up when I had nobody," Joseph said, his voice small but clear. "You sat in those seats. You built a birdhouse with me. You made me feel like I wasn't a mistake. And now I got 76 dads who actually want to be here." He looked around the room at faces covered in tattoos and scars and hard miles. "So thank you for teaching me that different kinds of dads can be just as good, maybe better, because you chose me." The clubhouse erupted in applause. Grown men wiping their eyes, Raven openly crying, and in that moment, in a Hells Angels clubhouse in small-town America, surrounded by ex-cons and outlaws and people society had written off, an 8-year-old boy in a wheelchair proved something the whole country needed to see. That redemption is real, that family is a choice, that showing up matters more than anything else, and that sometimes the scariest people in town are exactly the ones who teach you what love actually looks like. Joseph Goulding's father was in prison, would be for 4 more years. But Joseph had 76 dads now, and not a single one of them was going anywhere. If you believe that your father's mistakes don't define your worth, and that the scariest-looking people can teach you what love actually means, like and share this story. Subscribe now for more stories that prove ex-cons can be heroes, that disability doesn't diminish worth, and that real family is built on loyalty, not biology. Also, check out the 2 videos showing on the screen right now, specially crafted for you. See you in the next one, brothers and sisters.